So while every stage of the drawing is really quite complicated and has its own challenges, I think that this is one that is really actually quite labor intensive in the sense that when you are refining shapes and when you are sort of adding deeper values, expanding the value range that's present in the drawing, it really requires a quite attentive look at how that value is presented on the paper. What I mean to say, maybe with all this kind of complicated language, is that um, this is where I fill in the holes of the paper. This is where I make sure that the gradations I'm going to make across the drawing to turn the soft forms like the cheek or to create that beautiful atmospheric darkness within the shadow. Um, this is the place where I have to slow down my process almost to a standstill and just attend to the aspects of the drawing which are most closely related to technique. I'm also getting really quite concerned with the soft forms and the sort of slowly turning forms around the features. So as the values in the horizontal center line of the mouth, for instance, get darker, and as I'm keying the rest of the drawing darker, the gradations outward from those dark values will also have to increase in their intensity. So this is a moment where I wouldn't say maybe that things are in flux. That's not quite the right language, but what is happening is a migration on the darker half of the kind of value range towards realizing more of its full potential. There will be, of course, an exception in that I'll probably not indulge really in any super dark accents. And this is something really, really close to my heart, something I believe very much in the process of a drawing is that one has to be super careful with dark accents. Um, the reason being is that, of course, the nature of an accent is to be an exception to the rule. And if we're not really judicious in how we kind of choose to apply and arrange our accents, it's going to create a drawing where everything is an accent and therefore the accents don't have so much of that value. Think about interior design, a room that is composed in whites and grays, and then you have one accent wall or an artwork in that room that is really vibrant and full of color. That color is going to stand out. Now picture a room which is designed in every color of the rainbow, and think about that same accent wall or highly sort of chromatic artwork, and it's not going to stand out from its surrounding. It's going to kind of blend into them. And while neither of those is a kind of rule in itself that you have to compose in one way or the other, the appearance that I find in nature when I look at these models is not one that is thoroughly covered in accent. I think that it's one that is characterized by a certain degree of kind of restraint in that aspect. This is that point then where really, really sharp pencils and a careful choice of the kind of lead you're using for the kind of application you're making is really important. So when I'm working here, I generally am kind of tending towards my 0.3 millimeter pencils, um, though the darkness of the lead that I can get with those is only so much. If I need to get darker, I'll switch to my zero point 0.5 or zero point 0.7 or even my 2.0 millimeter lead holder, just in order to attain the sense of value that I need, while sharper pencils in probably slightly harder leads like my 0.3 or a wooden pencil that's an HB are going to be useful for creating the very smoothest versions of those transitions and those most even passages of value. Even with all of that consideration that the materials that I use are carefully selected, there is another aspect that is in play that is, I think, a skill that really requires a lot of building. Part of it is through the lightness of hand that you'll need. Another part is really through a sense of discipline about how to work in that manner. That skill then is trying to work on building up value without building up edges. Something that we tend to maybe create an association between that doesn't necessarily belong together is the idea that shapes and value are also attuned to having more defined or sharper edges. In this moment, if I kind of close up my shapes too much, if I create too soon the kind of hard faceted halftone shapes that are maybe more associated with, bony points in a much more finished drawing, I'm really going to kind of close up the sense of transition, tighten the sense of transition, and also create a reality that is maybe a little bit too non-naturalistic, or maybe divorced from, strictly speaking, the visual world that we're attempting to reproduce. I'm developing the values, I'm pushing them further, and each moment that I push a value darker, I then need to refine a shape or redefine a plane or double check the sense of the impression that I'm getting. Every time I push that spectrum forward a little bit wider, then there's several steps that I need to take kind of along with that. Um, it's the part of the drawing where I always imagine that when I look back at these videos and I'm looking at a half hour's worth of footage, it almost seems like nothing happens. I think the first stages of a drawing are very dramatic. We go from nothing into something, right? And that's a really kind of exciting stage. But of course, the slowness of the seeming progress in this moment kind of belies the importance of what's actually taking place. Um, as I work on the mouth, really the halftones that I'm engaging with at this stage are light enough that they're allowing me to deal with really, really subtle forms in terms of like how the chin is turning upward and these planes outside the lower edges of the lower lip are turning away subtly, and how that's corresponding to my development of the contour of her face.